the 7 points that I wanted to contribute was, first of all, that I'm privileged to be able to travel around Pakistan, Khyber to Karachi, and from my Oxfam days, I've sort of basically cultivated an approach of I take the trouble to go to the villages, go to urban communities, sit on the ground, and listen to what people have to say. I do think that actually a few months ago I published a little book on the aftermath of the floods, which was based on exactly that, just sitting on the ground and listening to what people have to say. And what I can say is that the concerns that people express when I travel from Khyber to Karachi, guess what? It's about unemployment, it's about cost of living, it's about load shedding, it's about disappointment with performance of governance and the sense of being let down by their own political representatives. And the irritants in the Pak-US relationship are entirely peripheral to the lives of the millions out there. And they basically don't even enter the discussion unless at the end of the discussion I feel obliged to say, and what do you think about this? So that's the first thing, is that for me, the reality of Pakistan is, in a sense, is just, it's something different from the things that one is obliged to talk about when we talk about the problems in the relationship. However, one can't brush things under the carpet or jowl them behind the door. Is that the top US foreign policy priorities over the past decade have, of course, concerned trying to defeat violent extremism, particularly Al-Qaeda, and to make a success of the new order in Afghanistan. And both of these projects, which are two slightly distinct projects, that the greatest threats that they face have been physically located inside Pakistan. And it's no longer controversial, it's established. There are, of course, questions of why and how and what to do about it, but the point is, the greatest threat to the key foreign policy objectives the US has faced has been located inside Pakistan, and that's why we keep on coming back to this relationship. The third one is that although we have seen this upsurge in anti-US sentiment in Pakistan, and a lot of people have related it to the war on terror, it's nothing new. I immediately think back to scenes that I personally witnessed in 1990 during the first Gulf War. I mean, I can remember like going to Shadis in Lahore, where you're trying to start one of these relationships that you end up counselling, and in the course of the wedding, people want to jump up and down doing Bhangra, saying Amrika Murdabad, in a wedding in Lahore, before we even invented the war on terror. So, I mean, there is a long history to this sentiment which has been bubbling up. But then also, many people are acutely aware, and I include in this even serving Taliban, who every now and then I have a chance to talk to, they're well aware of the contradictions in the popular sentiment. And so, I mean, I've listened to Taliban commanders saying, and we also know that leaders of the Defy Pakistan movement themselves aspire to send their children to America to study. And we all know that, but even the Taliban say it. And that leads you on to then the point which Ambassador pointed to earlier on, that the media has played a very prominent and disturbing role in stirring up this relationship, something which is well worth coming back to. And penultimately, that for me, one of the challenges in dealing with this troubled relationship and the reset is that so the thing which is gnawing on the mind of the US is all this stuff around militancy. The people that they can engage when they try to do their diplomatic resets may fundamentally not even be briefed, and certainly not in control of the issues around the safe haven and the propagation of militancy. That's a fundamental diplomatic and political challenge that they face. And then, finally, because when one talks through the irritants, quite often, I mean, a lot of the irritants that one mentions are irritants which are sort of, hands-up complaints from the US side. On the Pakistan side, I would say that having been involved in the political process in Afghanistan from the start, right from the toppling of the Taliban, but as someone who, of course, has got deep Pakistani roots, I was amazed at the way that right from the early days, somehow Pakistan seemed to be cut out. I mean, as somebody who was then serving as a political officer in the United Nations, I was amazed that one of the first initiatives that my boss, Dr. Brahimi, was determined to take was to close down the office in Islamabad as soon as possible and get the UN out of there. Which is that and there were so many other ways in which Pakistan somehow seemed to be marginalized in an international process in which Pakistan was fundamentally an important long-term stakeholder. And one also witnessed that very real anti-Pakistan currents in the process as it took off inside Kabul. Not necessarily currents which were willed or driven by the US, but the point was that the US was underwriting a process which had some of these currents. So that one should not be surprised that if, over a decade later, some kind of a response to this strange process of marginalizing and not quite taking Pakistan seriously, that it pops up in different ways, whether diplomatic or non-diplomatic. Those are just 7 thoughts to get us going, but fortunately we have got a very distinguished panelists. In a sense, if one had to be sort of like washed up on a desert island with access to no external resources and wanted to put together an interesting position on this, these 3 colleagues I see sitting beside me would be about in my sort of favourite list of people to be washed up with, and I'm sure we could crack it. So let's give 5 minutes or a couple more to Zaid Hussain, followed by Pirza Besham.
Thank you, Michael. It's very difficult to have this counseling for the marriage which has gone back for a very long time. 5 minutes is not so let me start. 3 marriages and 2 divorces. That's how the 6 years of relationship between the United States and Pakistan is really defined. The 3rd day of marriage is on the rock, and it's still not clear whether it could survive. But I still have some faith, though it's taking hanging with the thread. After a freeze of, I'm not going into detail as to what really happened in this period and how the relationship developed and what happened in 2011. But certainly after a freeze of relationship for over 4 months after this incident, there has been a thought after Pakistani Parliament has approved a general guideline for new relationships with the United States. It's a long list of stringent demands. It has to be put together and to devise a clear policy redefining the rules of engagement between the 2 countries, which is long expected, and I think probably it has to be done after the relationship has gone that bad. But I don't see any in near future the relationship going to a normal track, or even go back to what we had witnessed in 2011. But it will move forward a little bit. There's still several fault lines which have to be overcome before we can expect things to get on the track. Some of the demands, some of the issues which have been raised by the Parliament, which is quite interesting. I think probably one of them is the way they have spoken about the drone strikes. And I think that is going to be a bigger issue, a point of conflict, which I feel will be very difficult to be resolved. There has been a growing resentment and discontent about this issue, about the secret war which has been going on for several years. Although I'm sure it is the Pakistani government and the Pakistani military has been to some extent cooperating with these attacks. But now things seems to be changing after the increasing frequency of attacks. This is a war actually which the government has never been able to defend publicly. In fact, it's also a war which has never been acknowledged by the United States. So that makes things very quite difficult for particularly for Pakistan. And I think probably, yes, it has been very effective, one can argue. It has able to eliminate some key Al-Qaeda leaders. But on the other hand, we also see some political cost. And that is basically being debated in Pakistan quite strongly. And that has put the government under huge pressure. One thing good about this parliamentary discussion that after, I think, I will not say it for the first time, but certainly after a long time we have seen the parliament being involved in the policy discussion or debate. But there is a difference. The policy should be debated in the parliament because they are the public representative of the people, and that gives faith to this policy. But on the other hand, the problem is that the policy is not given by the parliament. Parliament can debate the policy, but here actually we saw the government waited for 4 or 5 months for the parliament to come out with some recommendation. And then a process has started where the government is supposed to devise the policy around that. There's a lot more, and that will create a lot of problem because the government will find itself bound in the box. And how to get out of the situation is very important. Now, the major fault line, still I feel, is the future of Afghanistan. That's basically a major point of conflict between the two countries. The incident which we have seen, which we have seen in 2011 might have contributed into it, but the major point of conflict is how should Afghan crisis be resolved. There may be some convergence of interest, as Robin has pointed out. Certainly there is in the interest of both the countries to see its stability being returned in Afghanistan. That's also be interested in Pakistan. But how to go about it, that's a major issue. How one can resolve this war which has gone on for 11 years, have gone bad, and so I think that's the Pakistan's point of view is certainly that they may not like actually the Taliban to come to return to power. Actually, there's a huge perception in the country that Pakistan is striving to bring back Taliban into power in Afghanistan, which may not be correct because when Pakistan started supporting Taliban in 1990, the situation was completely different. There was no organization like Taliban in Pakistan at that point. And in 2007, I think the reality has started sinking to Pakistan after Pakistan itself became a theater of war. I'm not going to how the numbers which have often been repeated and given there, but certainly war has spilled over to Pakistan. And Pakistan's greatest nightmare is that if Afghanistan's situation continues this way, and there's no solution is found, we will see Pakistan being sucked into this war more and more. Right? There are 3 scenarios one could see. Number 1, Afghanistan situation continues like this, which may directly affect Pakistan because as we have seen, Pakistan's tribal areas have become the center of the conflict. If Taliban take over Kabul, which is, I don't think it's going to happen, but still actually for theoretical theory's sake, then I think that in that scenario, Pakistan will lose northern areas. Tribal areas are already at one point in 2009, almost all the tribal areas had become, or basically become Taliban land. 2009, actually, some of the areas have been cleared, but it's still not very, I am not very sure that how much the whole Pakistan may be still have on those areas. The third scenario, which is basically, I think, probably in the interest of Pakistan, is basically some kind of political solution, where Taliban become a part of the process in Kabul. That will, I think, at this point of time, that the state is also trying to do that. But whether it can achieve or not, I'm not sure about it. But certainly that is the most plausible and most, from Pakistan, it is probably the most favorable situation. That it will just keep Taliban to the Kabul and not to see from the other side. But in any other situation, even if it's happened, I think probably in